What's up, everybody? My name is John Bautista, and you are listening to the Marriage Savvy Podcast. I'm excited for today's guest. We're bringing in Lyubov, who is a relationship coach expert working at the marriage place, and one of her specialties is working with neurodivergent relationships. Today, we're diving into ADHD and how it affects relationships, not just in terms of distractions or forgetfulness, but in the ways that partners connect, feel seen, and manage emotional rhythms. I had such a good time recording this episode, and Lyubov reminded me that humor in a relationship is probably one of the most important things to have. Coming up on today's show. The Marriage Savvy Podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be used to diagnose, treat, or act as medical advice. Always seek the advice of your primary care physician, mental health professional, or qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition and/or mental illness. Well, guys, we have a special guest today. We have somebody who is another relationship coach expert. Her name is Lyubov, and she works for the marriage place in our coaching program. Everybody give it up for Lyubov. All right. So what I wanted to do today is give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us what you do at the marriage place. But then also tell us how you got into the kind of therapy that you do working with neurodivergent couples. Okay. So yeah, if you can just share with us, who you are.
Yeah, my name is Lyubov. I've been focusing on ADHD marriages, ADHD relationships, and ADHD coaching here at the marriage place. And yeah, funny story how I got into it. I guess whole family is neurodivergent, and then all my
Really?
friends are neurodivergent, and so it just feels like home when I'm working with these clients. It just feels like it
Yeah.
just feels like home. So I very much can relate to their struggles and uh, just challenges on both the neurotypical and the neurodivergent side, and just an area I'm very interested in. So naturally, it was the direction I wanted to take my coaching.
So, yeah. I was going to ask, are you neurodivergent?
I mean, I've never been diagnosed with
Okay.
ADHD, but pretty sure if I went through that route, they would say I have ADHD of some sort.
That's fun. That's fun. Well, can you explain to people what neurodivergence means?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many ways to look at it from a neurological perspective. It's a difference in the neurological makeup of someone compared to someone that doesn't have it. So, for instance, people with neurodivergence tend to have less dopamine receptors, so they're always craving dopamine in their environment. Really, it's just a difference in processing because the wiring is different. So it really impacts executive functioning skills in a person, and just how that's developed. And a lot of times it's underdeveloped in people with neurodivergence. So obviously, executive functioning has a huge role in relationships and just in your success in life. So yeah, that's the biggest, I would say, impact with it. But yeah, I mean, we're really interesting people and have lots of ideas and kind of hyper focus like mad, but also have challenges that come with it.
Yeah. When did you realize that there was a difference with how you processed or saw the world?
Oh boy, are you talking about me specifically? I don't know. Recently, when I started working with this population, but I mean, I think it's funny. You're actually hitting on a really key topic, which is a lot of people, especially millennial and below, older, 30s, 40s, 50s, they were never diagnosed, so they just lived their whole life this way and didn't really think anything of it. Now we have better tools, better diagnostic to be able to catch it early and provide early interventions. But most people kind of fall in my bucket where, we've just been living our life and
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
challenges. And now we're like, wow, this could be that. That's interesting. So you kind of have a different lens to look at the world. And I would say, honestly, majority of my clients, John, were diagnosed later in life.
Mm.
or they were diagnosed at, as kids, but never really thought about the impact of their ADHD diagnosis on their future relationships or existing relationships. So it's really kind of a relatively new thing that people are figuring out. Wow, there's a lot there.
Yeah. All right. So we just talked about how you realize that a lot of people don't get diagnosed or realize that there needs to be a diagnosis until later on in their life.
That's right. That's
That
right.
means that they're living a good chunk of their lives, maybe in some frustrations, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely challenges that come with it. Like, why am I so disorganized? Why can't I remember things? Why do people, it's funny, people of neurodivergence are keenly aware of their deficiencies in their relationship.
Mm.
I mean, they truly start to believe everything their partner is saying, that they're unreliable, that they, don't follow through on tasks, that they forget everything. And, a lot of times when I meet them for the first time, their confidence is just not where it should be.
Wow, that's really
So,
interesting.
yeah,
I mean, especially because the people that you're in relationship, those are the people that are closest to you, and you tend to take their opinion like seriously. Like their thoughts matter about who they think you are, and somebody can be really disheartened and discouraged by some of the feedback that they're getting, and they might just say, man, I really am disorganized, I really am forgetful, man, I'm not good at this.
yeah, that's exactly how they feel, especially when it comes to things that are really challenging, like chores, right? I mean, again, any type of planning, like, I'll give you both perspectives here. Like the neurotypical partner feels like she has another child in the relationship. It's really like parent child dynamic in that, she feels, and I'm using she, but it could be a he too. So just I'm putting it out
Yeah.
there, but I'm just going to say she here because I do see a lot of women that complain about this. She feels like she does all the tasks at home, that she gets no help, and a lot of it is taken it very personally, like that, this person, my spouse does not prioritize a relationship. They don't care about me. We've had this conversation. I've been as clear as day as about like what I need them to do, and nothing is working. And so it just like from a neurotypical partner, they just feel constantly disappointed in their partner and
Mm.
constantly like their needs are not getting met in their relationship, and that they're having to essentially do everything on their own. So they feel very alone. Now, commercially on the other side, that partner feels like they're just constantly being nagged, that there's really like, there's nothing that they could do to ever please their partner, that nothing is ever good enough, that they're not good enough. In fact, they sometimes just stop trying because they're like, I'm never going to win this battle with this person. I mean, the expectations are so high, it's never going to get there. And, they just they really feel the weight. They really start to believe, after all the criticism, which a lot of them will say, well, that's valid. I am disorganized. I am impulsive. I do these things. It really takes a toll on their confidence. So they start to believe these things and blame themselves and question everything. And like, she doesn't deserve, she deserves someone better. So I hear a lot of that. And again, you have to remember neurodivergent people are highly misunderstood, because what happens in these type of relationships is the neurotypical partner, if she had any trauma at all, any childhood trauma, abandonment, feeling insecure, like it's going to come up in this relationship.
Hmm.
It's going to really hit home because all of their behaviors can be interpreted as like they don't care about like this person, they're not prioritizing, like they're abandoning them, they don't feel secure in the relationship. All of these things come up. So it just creates this crazy amount of stress and pressure for both ends, both feeling like their expectations have not been met in the relationship. But like the beautiful thing is, once you figure out, hey, a lot of this is a lot of this is neurological. Like there's real neurology behind why I forget things, and whatever, XYZ. Once we start like stop taking it so personally and look at it like just, hey, this is something that's really challenging, then we can start to really turn things around in the relationship.
That's really helpful. You said once they learn how to take it, um not in a personal way, and I feel like that takes a lot of emotional maturity for someone to differentiate themselves from uh their partner and saying, this is, they're not trying to do this to me, right?
Yeah.
This is something that they struggle with.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love this person and I want to help them walk through. Like that takes a lot of maturity uh on that partner's end.
100%. But honestly, it's not as hard as people might think it would be. And I'll tell you why. Like the strategy that they've been doing, I say this a lot in my coaching, like it hasn't been effective, right? The nagging, the criticizing, like it's just not effective. It doesn't elicit change in their partner. It keeps them stuck. It keeps them feeling bad. People don't change when their partner is like pissed at them. They change because they want to change, right?
Right.
So I give them a new perspective, and I'll give you an example. This is kind of breaking down what we're talking about. So a common scenario in these situations is like my husband said he's going to do the dishes, okay, and this week, let's just say he said he was going to do the dishes this week, and the husband did the dishes 2 out of the 7 days, okay. And so the wife comes back at the end of the week and she's like, see, I told you like that you wouldn't follow through on what you said you would do. Like, I can't trust you. Like, you don't prioritize me. We talked about how important this is. And like, obviously that doesn't end well and it doesn't do anything. Now, another perspective would be like, hey, babe, I know this is really tough for you because I know how challenging it is to do the dishes every day. But listen, before you didn't do it at all. Now you did it 2 times. Like, I'm proud of you. What can I do to like help you next week do it at least 3 times? And it's very motivating. It's like I'm acknowledging that this is a challenge and that there's been progress. And remember, like back to grade school, like somewhat for some people getting an A+ is like the end goal, but for some people a C+ is like that's what they're aiming for. And so you have to like I mean it's fine, but like you have to remember that with this, like this is a real challenging thing. Household management requires a lot of executive functioning, and that's something that they have weakness in. And so you're expecting an A+ the first week, and when you don't get that, you're like, oh, this person didn't do that, but like this person tried and they got to the C+ level, and next week maybe we can get a B+, whatever, but it takes time. And so I think looking at it from that perspective of, you know yeah, it wasn't perfect, but you did make progress. And as long as we're seeing progress, like that's really end goal. And then like honestly, like in my household, like we laugh. If my husband comes home and the house is a mess, you're like, hey, you must have had a really productive work day. I'm like, I did. And he'll like come and help me clean because the house is a mess. But you want it, that's kind of the end goal, is to get to a point where instead of being so critical of your partner that they didn't meet that expectation for the week, like, hey, we're partners. We're going to have a strengths based relationship. Like, if I suck at doing dishes, I'm probably not going to, that's not going to be my assigned task. Like, at least set a level playing field, right? If I'm really good at doing laundry, which I am, by the way, then I'm going to focus on laundry. And then, like, you do something that you're really good. And that's kind of how we start to turn things around is, if you're having household chore, like, that's the biggest battle in your house. And that's what, dude, hire a maid. Like, let's create an accommodation if we can. And if we can't, like, let's figure out a system where we have a level playing field, right? You're doing something you're strong at. I'm doing something that I know I can complete and that I'm strong at. And so we don't have to like focus on the negative all the time.
Yeah.
And we start growing the good in the relationship. So,
Yeah. That's That's helpful. And so I'd like us to pivot and talk about how to better understand these scenarios that you just brought up, and how to understand ADHD in the relationship context, identifying three things. And first, I'd like you to speak into this idea of attention patterns, and then the second thing is probably helpful is emotional regulation. And then the third thing I'd like you to just comment on is relational attunement. So if you can just kind of give your feedback and thoughts on how these three things really set the stage for understanding ADHD in the relationship.
I'm going to joke and say I might need a reminder about the last two things after I finish.
No worries, no
But
worries.
the first one, you said relationship. What again? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, 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 you're good. So attention patterns.
Say that one more time. I
Attention
missed
patterns.
attention patterns. Okay, yes. I think this is a perfect example. I pay attention, but if there's more than one or two things, that it's hard to like remember what you said.
Sure,
This is
yeah.
a perfect example.
I just want to give a shout out to Lyubov. I mean, she's just being very authentic and honest about what's going on right now in this episode. But anyways, I'd like to just go back to the episode. But I mean, what a fun time that we're having.
So inattention, yeah. So a lot of times inattention gets misconstrued as like I don't care, you're not really listening to me, you're zoned out. Like, did you even hear what I said? And the funny part is, a lot of times that person will like regurgitate what you said, but they don't really understand what you said because they there was something going on outside. I don't know, like something was happening that was a little bit more interesting at that moment. And that sounds so bad. But again, remember dopamine seeking. So it's a real thing. Like it happens to me all the time. My kids are like, Mom, did you hear what I said? And I just agreed to like getting McDonald's. And then I'm like, no, I didn't agree to that. And they're like, well, actually you did. So I think just again having humor, adding humor to it. I know we were laughing a lot, but seriously, instead of being like, "Oh, you don't care," and getting really mad, like, "Hey, yeah, it's a thing that happens. We can't help it. It's just our brain is always going like 100 miles an hour." And so, if at that moment we're not completely tuned in, meaning there's no distractions, there's a high likelihood that the bird chirping or the dog barking or someone doing something is kind of getting in the way of us really fully focusing on what you're saying. And so, yeah, just having some humor around that is always a great strategy of like, hey, did you hear me? We heard it, but doesn't mean we processed it. You know what I mean? And again, that's a neurological difference between your brain and my brain. Instead of taking that personally and making it about yourself when it's really not, like just saying, hey, I know I gave you a lot to process at once. I mean, even in coaching sessions, when my clients will go like on a vent, which happens a lot, like for 20 minutes, I'm like, I have to stop them and like, hey, dude, I need time to process what you just said. Let me just make sure I heard you correctly. And we laugh, but in the session, it's helpful because it just becomes jumbled up. I can't remember, and that's kind of that's how your partner feels when you're giving them all these instructions all at once, and they haven't had time to really process what you said. Maybe I should like talk less, let them process, make sure they understand, and then go to the next step. Does that make sense?
It does. So just so that I make sure I heard you correctly, is that because there's such a fix on paying attention to what might get you the most dopamine in that specific moment, whenever you give somebody or are trying to communicate with somebody, to keep it simple and maybe one step at a time. Like, don't give them everything all at once, because that just might frustrate one, the partner that has neurodivergence, right, ADHD, and then also the partner who's trying to get their partner to work with them, to cooperate, right, to collaborate. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And
Okay.
it's just not an effective strategy when you have a spouse that has neurodivergence to, I mean, I don't think it's an effective strategy for anyone, if I'm being honest. Like, if I have to vent to my partner, I will always warn them ahead of time and say, hey, I just need to vent. And you're probably just going to hear me say a lot in like 20 minutes. And but then it's like we take the pressure off each other to really get everything or respond to everything that was said, because there's no way that I could possibly retain everything you just told me without giving me a brain break to process.
Yeah, if you're trying to seek the health of your relationship, then the way that you even navigate and process things needs to change, especially, when somebody needs a different process to change, a more patient process, a more you know consistent repetition. It's helpful, right? So let's move on to the second one, which is emotional regulation. I do want to get your thoughts on understanding how uh neurodivergence shows up in trying to emotionally regulate.
Yeah, so this is a huge problem area. And again, it's an executive functioning skill. So again, there's naturally going to be more of a weakness for people with neurodivergence. And I also want to preface by saying this skill does not come with age. Okay, I have 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 6-year-olds that have these issues with emotional regulation. It comes with practice. And a lot of, especially if you're undiagnosed and you never learn how to process your feelings and how to deal with all that emotion, you're not going to like just learn overnight just because you're in a relationship. Um, these are skills that I work on every week with my clients to help them understand and be aware of their body. Like the first thing we talk about is like body awareness. Like, how do you physically start to feel when you get, overstimulated is what I like when you're having an amygdala hijack, how are you physically feeling? Let's identify that, because that's the first step in kind of helping you calm that down. So emotional regulation and getting like very hot very fast, brain level wise, like you're almost reverting back to like toddler, and how you process things, which is why in my coaching I always say take the temperature in the room. Like, are you running a little fever? Even if it's like 99.5, that's a good gauge for you to like slow down, because you're not going to be able to talk to your partner. You're not going to be able to really get anything accomplished when you're seeing that your partner is dysregulated or you're dysregulated as a result. So the other thing that I always say is don't react to their reactions. So if you do notice that they're getting really heated, passionate, and they're just, getting very angry, one tactic, and we do rely on people to co-regulate. That's natural. It doesn't mean you're dependent. It's just a normal, natural human thing. So I would like model for your partner, like, let me just take some deep breaths. I can see you're getting, really upset about this. Why don't we take some time to like cool off? Instead of reacting to their reaction, getting mad at them for getting mad, and then it getting just spiraling. That's a common core pattern that I see in a lot of these relationships, is like the partner reacts to the reaction that their neurodivergent partner's having, instead of just realizing that they are dysregulated at the moment and knowing their cues, physical cues for dysregulation, and just kind of stepping away and giving them time to self regulate.
Okay, so something that you said that I was like, man, that's so true. You said that being able to emotionally regulate does not come with age per se, but comes with practice.
100%.
Just to emphasize this is that, for us to grow in any type of quality, whether you're a neurodivergent or just, not neurodivergent, is that you have to be really intentional with how you're training yourself to respond to situations. Like, I think that doesn't really get like talked about enough, or maybe at all, is that we grow up not being aware that we're processing and we're learning, we're training ourselves on how we respond to things that don't go our way or go our way. Yeah, and then not knowing that whenever we get in a relationship and that person gets the most of who you are, right? They get to see all of who you are most of the time. I mean, that can be really difficult. That can be really, really frustrating. All right, so this last point that I wanted to have you speak on is relational attunement. So, can you talk about how empathy and perspective taking shows up in a relationship that has a partner that's neurodivergent um, and attunement?
Yeah, so I think it's a challenge, if I'm being honest, from both perspectives. So I'll start first with the neurodivergent perspective. I think it's always a challenge to kind of put themselves in your shoes. That's, again, a skill that we have to work on because they're, so used to looking at the world from their perspective. And even though it's different, like it's hard for them. It's a really hard thing to be able to say like, oh, okay, I can really feel what you're feeling right now, because again, a lot of times when they're convinced that this is what it is, this is what it is. So you can go back and forth, but yeah, it's hard to have that connection of like, I can understand where you're coming from, even though you completely disagree with what they're saying. A lot of times the focus is on like, let me prove my point and why I'm right. But again, this is an issue that comes up not only in neurodivergent relationship, but also in neurotypical relationships all the time. But it's especially prevalent in this type of dynamic because this is a challenge for the neurodivergent person. And I always say to that person, hey, all feelings are valid. Like, not all behaviors are allowed, but all feelings are valid. So if I feel a certain way about something, like, there's no like right or wrong there. Even though, again, that black and white thinking comes into place and like, no, it's either this or that. So again, if you can imagine, if you have black and white thinking from their perspective and also from the neurotypical perspective, you're going to butt heads. So then we go back to what is the point of communication? The point of communication is truly understand what the other person is saying. So if we're focusing on understanding, we need to be able to, be attuned to what our partner is feeling. And that means going like one step deeper than just, I don't agree with you or this is wrong because this is not how I see it. But like, hey, I do see it differently, but I can totally see why you see it this way. Or I can see why you interpreted my behavior this way. So I'll give you a little example. This is another thing that comes up a lot. I said I would do X, Y, and Z. And you agreed, the neurodiverse partner agreed to it. They said, yes, I will complete, this task. I will clean out the garage. And then that partner really didn't think through, like the pre-planning part of this. We really didn't think through, like, when are we going to have time to clean out the garage? Do we have the tools to clean out the garage? Like, what day is the best day? Like, we didn't think through any of that before we agreed to that. We agreed to it, and guess what? We didn't have time to do it during the week. We didn't have the tools. We didn't have the trash bags, whatever we needed. And it doesn't get done. So when you made that promise, again, the neurotypical partner took it as like, you're unreliable. You said one thing and you didn't follow through. But really, it was a problem in pre-planning. We set an expectation, but we didn't think through how are we actually going to follow through with that. So again, what I do with the neurotypical partner is like, hey, maybe you can ask some questions to help with the pre-planning. Like, hey, when do you think you'll have time to do this? What tools do you need? Is there some way I can help with this? That way we know that they have the ability to do it and when to do it, versus like getting mad, taking it personally, and getting pressured. Again, another way where you see like that neurology come through. And then again, from the neurodiverse partner, being able to see that situation from their lens and saying, oh yeah, like I made you a promise and I didn't follow through. And you might think that I don't prioritize the relationship. You might think I don't care. You might think I'm unreliable. And that makes sense. That's a valid feeling given the situation.
This has been a really interesting and super helpful episode podcast with you because, man, it is similar to like regular, like neurotypical like relationships, but there is an emphasis on providing rhythms, having grace, showing empathy. Like these are skills that we really need to work on if we want to contribute positively to these relationships that we have.
100%.
All right, guys. Well, that's our show for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's discussion on the neurodivergent relationship and some of the things that naturally go on. Just like any other couple, there are things that we need to constantly work on and figure out. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the second installment of this topic of neurodivergency in relationships. I've been your co-host, John Bautista. Stay savvy. Peace.